Thrilled to have back here on the Rich Eisen Show. It's been a minute. The NBA second half, in air quotes, of the season returns tonight. I love watching him on ESPN talk basketball, and I love when he comes in here and chops it up with us. Brian Windhorst of the worldwide leader in sports back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Brian?
Hey, Rich, I'm in Phoenix. I was told this was the place to be, but I got here and you're gone.
I know. I know. But it's also the play. We were there, Brian. It happened the Thursday of Super Bowl week when the trade deadline went nutty. And Durant shows up in Phoenix, and people there are flipping out about it and can't wait. When do we see him, do you think, for the Suns?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so the Suns are at about an hour from now. We're going to go through their first practice post All-Star. They were the last team to finish first. The end of the first half is kind of laughable. There's only 20 games left, but so they get the benefit of not having to start until Friday. So they're having their first practice after All-Star weekend today. But Rich, I don't think Durant's going to be ready to go by tomorrow. He wants to do some live contact because he hasn't played, full 5-on-5 in 6 weeks. He wants to do some live contact and see how his knee responds to that. So they haven't announced he's not going to play tomorrow for all you folks who may place a wager. But I would not bet on it, nor would I buy a ticket for tomorrow's game if you were thinking about seeing Durant. They do play Sunday in Milwaukee, and as much as my executive friends at ESPN would love to see him debut in that ABC game against the Bucks, there's a chance that that's going to be no Durant, no Giannis. And that I think it's most likely, although Milwaukee isn't ruled out, it's most likely next Wednesday in Charlotte against the woebegone Hornets, which is a much more comfortable first opponent than the Bucks, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, the woebegone Hornets is a great way to put it because the Hornets were one of those teams that was a seller on trade deadline. And just, which team do you think improved itself the most? Let's remove Durant from the equation because clearly, that is one.
I was going to say
as well.
The team I'm with.
give me one that we're not talking about that you think they really did a great job. Give me that one.
So the Clippers, for what the Clippers traded for what they got back, I thought they upgraded nicely. Then they took this Westbrook gamble, which I've really been thinking about it ever since Monday when it came down, trying to square it. And I think I'm kind of in the same boat that the Clippers were because I think they weren't 100% on board from a front office standpoint at the start. Paul George is probably the biggest Russell Westbrook fan in the NBA, and he lobbied publicly and privately the Clippers to make that move. And so they had just really started playing their best basketball of the season. They made some nice additions at the deadline, and Kawhi Leonard is playing the best basketball he has since he tore his ACL in the playoffs 2 years ago. And so they do that. So they're a team that I just like where they were as a team, and now I'm not sure the Westbrook thing. And the other team I'll mention is the Memphis Grizzlies. So the Grizzlies have lost. I think they hit the break having lost. I think 9 of their last 13 games. They lost position in the Western Conference. Denver now has a 5-game lead, I think, for the number 1 seed. And one of the reasons they've really struggled this year is they've been just dreadful shooting the ball. They've got Desmond Bane, and that's about it. So they went out and traded for Luke Kennard. And you wouldn't say that Luke Kennard is a difference-making player, but he's one of the top. He was the number 1 three-point shooter in the NBA last year. I think he's in the top 3 again this year. And so to have him as an option, adding him to that roster, that you have the ability to add one of the best three-point shooters in the league, he could make a nice difference for them for a team that was already pretty competitive when they were healthy. So
let's return to the Westbrook subject matter, Brian Windhorst, for a moment. What's your concern? I mean, because wouldn't Ty Lue be one of the guys who could tell, PG-13, I know you liked him, but it just doesn't fit, and he's sitting on the bench, and he could pull that off if it doesn't work? Or how would it not work? How do you envision this looking?
Yeah, so I mean, Ty obviously was for it; otherwise, he wouldn't be on the roster.
Right.
But I think the Clippers play a style where they don't have a true point guard. fact, they traded away two of their point guards at the deadline, Reggie Jackson and John Wall, although Wall was out and was injured and not playing. And they basically made Terrence Mann, who was a point guard but also kind of a combo guard, and they traded for Eric Gordon, which is one of the moves I really liked the Clippers did. And he handles the ball. In fact, in their last game before the break, Eric Gordon led them in assists. And also Paul George handles the ball. Kawhi Leonard can handle the ball. So they kind of had a team that was designed to have multiple different players sort of run their offense. And like I said, Rich, it was working. I mean, they really have played their best basketball in the last 10 games. And that's mostly because Kawhi has looked good, to be clear. And so, you know, they needed a point guard, which is why they did this move for Westbrook, but they also didn't need a point guard. And, you know, Terrence Mann played arguably the best game of his season, the last game as the starter at point guard. Mm-hmm. And he went away on his break and came back and found out that he maybe had been replaced. So I'm not saying that Terrence Mann is going to swing the balance of power in the Western Conference, but it was just it's a move that carries some risk. And so the thing that Lawrence Frank, their team president, said yesterday when he talked about the signing for the first time is he used two varies. He said they were very, very honest with Westbrook about what the role they expected. And, you know, I'm going to take that to heart, but I could also see a situation where Westbrook starts. And so my question is, like, if you bring in Westbrook, do you bring him in and start him? And if you do, and it doesn't work out, now what do you do? Because you're already putting him in a position that was a problem with the Lakers. And if you bring Westbrook in and don't start him, and you bring him off the bench, is he going to be okay with that? He was okay with it with the Lakers, but is he going to be okay with it with the Clippers? And here's the big thing I think on the Westbrook front. No matter what happens, you have to understand. Mm-hmm. With the Lakers, they traded three quality players. You know, Kyle Kuzma, who's an excellent player, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, very important part of the team that won the title for the Lakers, and a first-round draft pick, and they were paying Westbrook $47 million. So he was clogging their cap. It was one of the reasons why they couldn't really afford to balance out the team. That's what the Lakers had. That's what the skin in the game the Lakers had. The Clippers are paying him a few $100,000 for the rest of the season. And if it doesn't work out, they can theoretically just cut him. So that difference is very important when you think about how to frame the way Westbrook played for the Lakers and the way he's going to potentially play for the Clippers.
And if he does start, would he be the first potential Sixth Man of the Year award winner to get traded, then bought out, then signed, and then start the final 20 games of the year? Has that ever happened?
With all due respect, there was never a chance he was winning Sixth Man of the Year. And it's one of those things where, I mean, the Lakers were in 13th place. And one of the reasons they were in 13th place is because Westbrook, not every night, there were nights where he definitely helped them win, but there was a lot of nights where he was a big reason why they lost. And it's just an example of why I would tell people never, ever, ever bet anything on the Lakers, because even if you win the bet, the price that you will get is going to be so bad that you could probably put your money elsewhere, because the sports books take advantage of the Laker fans' willingness to bet crazily on their team. So the reason that Westbrook was the number one in Sixth Man of the Year was because crazy Laker fans were under the impression that a player like who's playing like that on a 13th place team would win that award.
Brian, I just love the way you talk, man. Brian Windhorst here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's talk LeBron a little bit here. Waking up on this first day of the quote-unquote second half of the season, getting set to take on the Warriors tonight in the late game on Turner here on this rainy, chilly day in Los Angeles. What is he thinking? What's going through his mind today, do you think?
Well, Brian? So there's kind of two types of LeBron James. There's LeBron, and then there's LeBron who believes in his team.
Okay.
And we've seen this occasionally. It happened in Cleveland. His last year in Cleveland, he had kind of got, I don't know if he'd agree with this verb, he kind of got a little disillusioned with where the team was. He was kind of, I mean, he played 82 games that year, so I'm not implying that he wasn't invested, but like he went on kind of like this sort of headspace departure and trying to be kind. And then they traded Isaiah Thomas and a bunch of other players, and all of a sudden the LeBron James who came back and played down the stretch that season was as good as he's ever been. And the Cavs, privately said, yeah, we traded for Rodney Hood and Larry Nance, but what we also traded for was prime, fully engaged LeBron. So when LeBron came out at All-Star Weekend and basically said he believes in this team and that these are the 23 of the most important games of his career, which I don't think is true, but the fact that he said that leads me to believe that LeBron that you're going to see, not that he wasn't fully engaged, but there were a couple of times with this Lakers team in the last few years where he knew they weren't making the playoffs, and he either shut it down to deal with an injury or you could tell his foot wasn't fully on the gas. I think you're going to see a full foot on the gas LeBron James starting tonight. And look, he's dealing with some injuries. He's been dealing with a sore foot. He's been dealing with a sore knee. He's 38 years old. I'm not saying you're going to see the LeBron from the Miami days, but I think you're going to see LeBron going full bore, and I think he is trying to get his teammates, he's trying to set the tone for his teammates to do the same, particularly Anthony Davis. Because when Anthony Davis was playing well in December, the Lakers were a good team. They were a playoff quality team. And I believe, Rich, this roster that they have, if you look at this roster now 1 through 7, it's a roster that is a playoff roster. But what's happened with the Lakers is that they started this season 2-10 because the roster design at the start of the year was atrocious. And Westbrook in the starting lineup was a terrible schematic decision. They finally got Westbrook out of the starting lineup. They finally started to find a little bit of their footing. And then Anthony Davis dealt with an injury, and then LeBron dealt with an injury. But this is a roster that should be in the top 6. And most years, if you were talking to me in the last week of February about a team in 13th place making the playoffs, I'd have said, Rich, I can't believe we're talking about this right now. But I can look you in the eye and tell you, with the way the West is bunched up, with some of the moves that the teams in front of them have made, which are kind of quasi-tanking maneuvers, and with some injuries in front of them, including to Zion Williamson, who just re-injured his hamstring and now is maybe missing most of the rest of the regular season. Like, it can be done. They can get into. I mean, Darvin Ham said he thinks they can get into 6th place. That would be a hell of an accomplishment to pass 6 teams in 6 weeks. But they can definitely get to the play-in, and you get to the play-in, you have a shot with LeBron James on your roster.
And then the Warriors, the world champs, are in town to take on LeBron and the Lakers tonight. What's going through Steve Kerr's mind, do you think, this morning?
So it's been a very frustrating season for them, and they've basically been a 500 team for 4 months. Their defense has been really, really down from where it was last year, and particularly where they were when they were going on their real dynastic run when they were top 3 defense year after year. They've been in the bottom 10 for most of the year. It's driven Kerr crazy. Then, of course, you've got the 2 different injuries to Steph Curry, the injury to Andrew Wiggins, which really derailed them a little bit. And then Klay Thompson didn't start the year real well. And so all of those come together. You got a 500 team. Now, most of the time I would tell you that if a team is 500 after 60 games, they're a 500 team. That your record is what you say it is. However, when the Warriors have had their starting lineup together this season, which has only been for about 300 minutes, which is minute at this point of the year. But when those guys who were basically on the floor together at the end of the year last year are together, they outscored the opposition by 20 points per 100 possessions. In other words, they are absolutely the most devastating 5-man lineup in the NBA. So the Warriors can, again, look you in the eye and say, if these 5 dudes are together and playing and healthy, when you get to the postseason, they are very difficult to stop. And you would say, well, my God, they might be a play-in team. And I would say, yeah, but they have won a record, at least one road playoff game in 27 consecutive playoff series. 27, which is the all-time record. So you're not going to look at them and say, boy, I don't think they can win on the road. So if they're all healthy, particularly Steph, by mid-April, I am, again, talking about a team and whatever, they're in 8th place, and I would tell you bring them up as a title team, I think would be insane. I absolutely think that they could win it and might even be the favorite, which makes people's blood in Denver boil because they're the best team by a mile right now, but I can't rule that out.
And then there's, of course, Phoenix as well. A few minutes left here with Brian Windhorst here on the Rich Eisen Show. Who do you like in the East? Who do you like there?
Yeah, it's a grinder, and it's almost someone in my job, Rich.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost more like who's going to be disappointed because between Philly, Milwaukee, and Boston, all three of those teams in a lot of years in the last decade in the Eastern Conference would have walked to the final. I mean, a couple of those LeBron Cavs teams that he got to the playoffs, now a couple of them were really good, but a couple of them that made the finals would have been buzzsawed by one of these top three teams. And one of them's going home in the second round. It's a mathematical guarantee. And, you know, in Milwaukee, you've got Chris Middleton can be a free agent, Brook Lopez can be a free agent, and Giannis has an extension option in his contract in the fall. In Philly, James Harden is headed to unrestricted free agency. So, like, somebody's going to be sent home in the second round with a lot of questions, and that's what I'm looking at. Like, oh my gosh, this East race is going to make somebody really upset because these teams are all spending, and they're all, you know, they can all win it. So, you know, look, Boston has been the number one team from front to back, and I certainly can't deny that they are much deeper than they were a year ago when they went to the finals. But Milwaukee has barely been whole and is sitting there in second place and has won 12 games in a row. And I think when everybody's fully healthy and at full power, I think Milwaukee is the best team. I actually believe that last year. If Chris Middleton hadn't have gotten hurt, I think the Bucks would have won their second straight title. But Chris Middleton did get hurt. And Giannis has dealt with several injuries this year. And so, you know, and Joel Embiid has gotten hurt routinely in the postseason. So I think health, unfortunately, is going to play a huge role in who ends up winning it.
Well, I mean, I can't believe it. It looks like a misprint. The Nets being 10 games over 500 after everything this year with Kyrie and his Amazon video tweet and his suspension. And then we all know now he's on the Mavericks. Durant getting hurt. You know, Simmons hardly really doing very much with the exception of like a 2-week burst during, you know, the fall. Is Jacques Vaughn getting like any outside dark horse coach of the year conversation? I mean, that's unbelievable, Brian.
He's not getting that, but he's getting a lot of people's sympathy.
Interesting.
Yeah, it helps when you go on a streak where you go 18-2.
Yeah,
that helps your overall record. They went 18-2 when Kyrie and Durant were healthy and engaged, and that was why people thought they had a real chance. I was one of them. And I thought it was going to be questionable whether they could win 3 playoff rounds with Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton, both of whom can't go to the free throw line. But that, you know, they had a really good team, and it was one of the reasons why they held on, Rich, for so long with so many, you know, drama that hit because they were trying to just give themselves one honest chance, and they weren't even able to do that. But they do have a very stocked roster. And while people here in Phoenix still, you know, are very excited about picking up Kevin Durant, there's still a tinge of melancholy because they gave up Mikal Bridges, who was one of the most beloved Suns players of the modern era. And Bridges, you're going to see when he's not, you know, yielding to Booker and Chris Paul, which he should have. That's not saying he shouldn't have. He's really talented. So they have a really talented team, but I think they've got a really talented team that's going to finish 5th or 6th for the next few years.
Right.
Because they gave away their elite talent. But, you know, they're a somewhat interesting team, but they're really a story of missed opportunity.
And 2 more for you. The Hawks go where with their coach now? Is it Quin Snyder? Is it going to be him?
I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a general manager at a press conference where he announced the firing, where he openly said who they wanted to hire. Landry Fields, who... No, the Hawks, I should point out, have fired their general manager. I mean, I guess he resigned, Travis Schlenk, and coach mid-year. Never good. I've been around covering the NBA for 20 years. That's my knowledge, Rich. I can impart to you this great wisdom. It's never good when you move on from your GM and coach in the middle of the season. But Landry Fields comes out at the press conference announcing they fired Nate McMillan and says, yeah, Quin Snyder is the guy we want. I mean, it's kind of like LeBron's open recruiting of Kyrie Irving over the All-Star weekend. The only thing LeBron didn't say was, boy, Kyrie, I love the way you're wearing your hair these days. It was just short of that. And that's essentially what the Hawks did. They were just like, yeah, we're trying to get a jump, and we'd love to have Quin Snyder. The thing about Quin Snyder is that just about every job opening is going to happen, and there's almost certainly going to be a handful more, is going to want Quin Snyder. And Quin Snyder might want to see what happens with the draft lottery, because Victor Wembanyama, who's coming over from France, is one of the most intriguing, if not the most intriguing draft prospect in 20 years. And I'm not saying that that's where Quin would go, but if I had 4 or 5 options, I'd like to see everything play out. So I'm sure the Hawks, when I say I'm sure, it's really come out of Landry Field's mouth that they'd like to hire Quin Snyder this afternoon. But Quin Snyder is going to probably wait and see how everything plays out. He is the most desired coach on the market.
And then the last one for you, with a 20-some-odd game sprint to the end of the season, have we now departed the injury management stars that were injured a year and a half ago, or injury management, and they're sitting on back-to-back games portion of the season, or we're going to still see that?
No. I mean, we'll definitely continue to see load management. And in some cases, I think it makes sense. There's some teams that probably should prepare for the postseason, but there's some teams that cannot afford even one loss. So like the Lakers cannot afford to give away one game if they're going to accomplish this. So I would say that unless LeBron is really, or AD is really banged up, you're not going to see load management. But if you're the Denver Nuggets and you're protecting Jamal Murray, your point guard who's just now playing well, coming off a torn ACL, and you got a 5-game lead in the West, I could see you holding him out of some games. So it's going to depend team to team, but this is the load management era, and it's a complicated issue, and it hurts the NBA on a regular basis, and it's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, all right. Thanks again, Brian. Let's do this more often. I greatly appreciate it all the time. Thank you, sir. You're the best.
Thanks, Rich. Take care.
The absolute best. Nobody better than Brian Windhorst, back here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.